That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The real obstacle for Donald Trump's campaign against DEI isn't Democrats, it's demography. What does that mean? There are less and less white people in the United States. That's the argument CNN is making. Let me stress this again. Don't look at me. I didn't bring this up. CNN is outright saying that because there are increasingly fewer white people, that's a weird way to say it, because population growth is driven by non-white people, Donald Trump and his campaign is going to lose. That's a real weird thing for you to say, CNN. It's almost as if you think race supersedes political views or ideology. Heavens me. Now, the one thing I want to add to this before we get into all the nitty gritty, you may be looking at your screen and saying, but Tim Pool is nothing more than a white man. In fact, I am not legally white. Now, I know many of you know this because it's a meme, but as much as people claim I say it, actually I don't say it that much. But as an individual who is 1/4 Asian, I am not listed as a white person in census taking or whatever. I'd be listed as biracial or something like that, which is not white. So if they were actually going to look at the area and say, how many white people are here? I would not count for this. They would say there's one white person, one non-white person. Even though I'm mostly white, but, not completely. The point is, if I was half black and Asian, or if somebody was, they would be listed as black and or Asian. This will skew the numbers. But that being said, it's important to point out, the reason I bring that up is because as the populations do grow, and as white people do, there are more and more mixed race families that may still be largely white. They're not going to get counted in this way. I guess I'm saying that as a sort of, it's not necessarily that there's a decline. The decline in white people is not as massive as it looks. They're just saying that they're not going to count it. But I digress. CNN is making the argument. White people are on the decline in Europe, in the United States, and because of this, Trump's campaign's a failing. This is from February, mind you, but let's read, and I've got more data. They say, the escalating drive for Donald Trump and other Republicans against programs to promote greater diversity in education and employment is on a collision course with fundamental changes in the nation's demographic makeup. Conservative opponents of diversity initiatives have clearly seized the momentum in the policy debate. In 2023, the 6 Republican-appointed Supreme Court justices joined in a decisive ruling to virtually eliminate the considerations of race in college admissions. Blah, 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 blah. We get it. But the diversity counteroffensive is advancing precisely as kids of color have become a solid majority of the nation's youth. Since the start of the 21st century, young whites have been rapidly declining, not only as a share of the overall youth population, but also in their absolute numbers, to an extent possibly unprecedented in American history. This tectonic reshaping of the American population means that demography, not Democrats, will likely emerge as the biggest obstacle to Trump's campaign to uproot DEI programs across U.S. society. I want to stress that once again for you. DEI is an ideology that not all people share, regardless of race. There are many white people who support it and many non-white people who do. CNN is making the argument that DEI will win as white people go away, which is retarded because, as I mentioned, I don't qualify in the census data as a white person, nor will my child, despite only being 12.5% Asian. But not only that, there are many Latinos. There's people like Clarence Thomas. He's black and on the Supreme Court and opposes all this DEI garbage. Doesn't matter. The left, CNN, and many of these individuals along with the left, Democrats, view the world through a racial lens. So what will happen? Well, I don't think they're completely wrong. Let me put it this way. If you are talking about saying you want to give a benefit to a racial group, I would not be surprised if these people take those benefits. Take a look at Zohran Mamdani, who says he wants to tax white people. Why would that ever be allowed? Well, because 70% of New York is non-white. Not that they're all one race. 29% is Latino, and then I think it's actually 20% is black. White people make up 29%. The plurality, but only by like a single percentage point. That's right. So they're called the majority, despite being in the minority. Based on the view of CNN, it's non-white versus white, in which case white people are a minority in New York. So for Zohran Mamdani, he can go to the 70% non-white and say, let's take the money from the white people. And they all go, okay. And then the white people are like, wait, what? Actually, most of them are liberal. So they're like, yay, take our money. He literally says he's going to tax white people. This is where we're going as a nation. Now, Donald Trump reversing this trend, it's a symptom, it's a component, it's an emergent phenomenon. I believe it'll similarly happen in the UK. I believe it's inevitable. No one will accept being oppressed. Now, the left argues that minorities are oppressed, and that's a lie. They argue this because there is a racial majority, and racism does exist, and there are problems, and have been. But white nations, we call them liberal democracies, have largely been in favor of and view the world through an egalitarian lens, largely due to the Enlightenment. It is typically white European nations in the United States, Canada, the Commonwealth countries that have allowed for the mass migration of non-white individuals and this desire for a multicultural utopia. It's not Japan or China or India. India's got its own caste system internally, despite the fact that they're all Indians. No, for the most part, it is these countries. When white people become the minority, the expectation is, I think what CNN is saying, this will change. Race will become the determinant factor in policy and politics. That's what they're saying. Maybe. I don't think it's that white people are white is what defines their ideology. I think it's that white European nations had an enlightenment, and this spread throughout the colonies and the Commonwealth countries in the United States, and that ideology has resulted in this change in structure. When the descendants who hold this ideology largely go away, it includes Latinos, black individuals. Many hold these values. When these American and Western values are in the minority, because largely what we're seeing, it's not about race, but about origin, then yes, Trump's agenda is in trouble. What we can see is that we have this from Wiley Online, the decline of the non-Hispanic white population in the United States, which has been ongoing for a while. We have this, white British people will be a minority in 40 years. And then we have this from The Hill. Census shows U.S. growth driven by minorities. White population falls under 60% from 2021. The large driver of the U.S. population has been immigration, largely illegal immigration. The people from the third world were not raised on Enlightenment values, and so they don't share the structure of governance and this idea of a utopia. What happens? They will come and they will form enclaves, like the Somali enclave in Minnesota or the Muslim enclave in Dearborn, Michigan. These enclaves will seek to exist as they did in their culture, but under the umbrella of prosperity in the United States. By all means, the system allowed them to do it. I believe assimilation and integration is important, and I'm a fan of immigration at controlled levels and with proper distribution of these individuals. These enclaves will eventually fall at odds with the surrounding communities. It's already starting to happen, what with female genital mutilation in Michigan on the rise. Eventually, white people in this country, like in New York, who are told they'll be taxed just specifically, explicitly because they're white, are going to say, no, you're not taking my money because I'm white. Many liberals, man, it's crazy. White liberals get on their knees and literally kiss the feet of black people. Not everyone, not all the time, but these have happened. That mentality will result in an oppressed class of weird white people self-flagellating. But as for the rest of the country, many of these people, if it gets to that point, or say in Britain, are going to say no. And that's when you get conflict. Therein lies the big problem with a mixture of ideologies and multiculturalism. The Democrats tried creating this idea that multiculturalism was everyone living together, holding hands and swinging left and right under a rainbow. But what they actually built was enclaves side by side with ideologically opposed enclaves. For instance, in Michigan, Dearborn, there's a lot of female genital mutilation popping up. Their bakeries there, Crowder did this bit. The bakeries there won't make gay cakes. Nobody complains. None of the Democrats are going there and shutting them down. You can travel only a few blocks, maybe a mile, and you are now in a white, traditionally American ideological world that says absolutely not to female genital mutilation. Or they say you should bake the cake for the gay couple. There will be a growing enclave. The Muslims there have many, many children. They're very religious, and that will spread. It will butt heads with the community, and then eventually people are going to say no. In an enlightened majority population, I do not believe white, because there are many people in the United States like Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas is one of the most based MFers this country ever has. Frederick Douglass, also a based MFer. You have awesome Black and Latino and Asian individuals in this country. Dinesh D'Souza, of course, I believe he's Indian, also very based. Vivek Ramaswamy, very based. It is the ideology. But when these ideas become the minority, you will get conflict. That is where we're going. Don't take my word for it. CNN said it right there. With a decline of white people, they say that's what will happen to this country. Okay. Crazy view, CNN. Very racist. I'm going to leave it there. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. Stay tuned. We got more coming up for you. And we will see you all in a little bit.